Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Thursday, September 16th, and this is your end of day recap. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only. Everything that we're talking about is for education purposes. Here is the risk disclaimer. If the screen is a little bit blurry, it's just because YouTube takes a little bit longer to render the high definition version of the video. So let's get into today's market action. Very whippy price action to start the day. All things that I think are accompanied with a week of quadruple witching. Sell programs, a couple buy programs in there. Just, again, whippy price action. What stood out like a sore thumb today was just how well the growth names were acting. Even though when we kind of started to kind of press to the downside a little bit in the first hour and a half of the day, there was a lot of names that were acting pretty well. So it was one of those things where you just kind of had to wait it out a little bit. If you had a little bit of puts on in S&P, they actually could have worked pretty well for you. But we started to see what was basically different than yesterday, but similar to what we saw earlier in the week in regards to selling on the open, right, and selling in the first couple hours of the day. We did rebound quite nicely. I said earlier that it was a little bit of a bend but don't break market. We came right down here, and again the Market Web's valuary is giving us, an exceptional level to kind of watch for support and not get overly excited by the move up in the VIX that was happening, as well as the price action to the downside. So we held that 44.32. This is on just the 5-minute chart. You get a valuary every day. Based on yesterday's price action, and that was perfect. Right, so you could see obviously for tomorrow's valuary how it's shaping up. It's a little bit of an inside valuary for the S&P. Before we go over to the single stocks, which there was a lot of them to talk about today, but notice again, and this is something that I said in the trading room, is that hey, if you had a nice day today, we've basically rallied all the way through the value area. If you have the sense of, hey, let's not be overly greedy, and if you're doing a lot of short-term trading, this was a great place to say, hey, this was a nice day from low to high, and take some profits. Also, if you notice, let me just turn these labels on so you could see the exact level. But this is a level that I feel like I've talked about many times this week. 4477 spot 75. Right. So we are not notice since we broke into value on Friday of last week. Right, which is here. Monday, touch this. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So again, the Market Web's valuary is telling you everything that you need to know. That we've got some resistance here in the S&P at 4477 spot 75. Right, so keep that in mind. It's just something that has to be overtaken. And if we can't, if we start turning back away, that there's a reason for that. We just don't have the power to kind of get back above, and that would get me a little bit more conservative. Now, let's talk a little bit about NASDAQ and small caps. But, overall, this was a day that even though, you go back to this S&P chart, right, and I just see indecision. Right, I see if we can't get back over that level 4477, I don't know if it's because of quadruple witching. I don't know if it's because of something else. Then that could be, problematic, I think, right, as we're trying to overtake that. Again, you kind of have to remind yourself it's September, so I am not again, I'm not giving advice, I'm saying what I'm doing, but I'm not getting over the tips of my skis with exposure here. It's just not worth it in any September. Right, just have to have that seasonality in the back of your mind, as well as quadruple witching that's going on for tomorrow. Speaking of quadruple witching, I'll give you my quick 30 seconds. At least I'll try to keep it 30 seconds. Things to watch out for tomorrow. Well, number one, I wish I could be more specific about the price action. I used to trade. It used to be what I used to do when I was an institutional trader. I worked on a Delta One trading desk, and our biggest days, our the days where we were busiest was on quadruple witching, right? Because we used to handle a lot of the index rebalancing that happens. Now, that index rebalancing will happen on the close tomorrow. Now, somebody was talking about today, like for example, like Match.com is supposed to have a lot of volume to trade at the end of the day. So that's maybe one name to watch. Now, does that mean it's going to go up tomorrow? Not necessarily, because a lot of that has already been gamed, right, by the institutions. The institutions they've known since last Friday, by fact what the actual names that are being rebalanced in the S&P. Remember, they're being rebalanced back to benchmark weights, right? That happens every quarter. So there will be heavy volume on the close tomorrow. So, if you're kind of not trading that much for tomorrow, one thing to note is you'll see this heavy volume in every single name. I would not make any crazy conclusions, right, about, hey, this name has heavy volume. That's a great thing. Look at the buying that happened on that day. It's just all related to index rebalancing, right? So watch out for that. Also, like I tweeted out my, ETF flows is something that I've been tweeting out for years, right? Every quarter this happens. There are huge inflows into ETFs. What happens is dealers are collapsing positions. A lot of these broker dealers, they have positions on. They again, this is really getting into the weeds and longer than 30 seconds, but they have a lot of positions on for funding reasons, right? A Delta One desk also makes money based on funding rates, right? What their stock loan is lending versus what the street is lending. I know it's very complicated, but they may be sitting long an ETF and short the underlying basket and arbing the interest rate, right? So they could have like $1 billion position on, right? It could be like a sector ETF, long XLF and short the underlying basket, and they could be making a spread in funding by about like 20 or 30 basis points. What happens is those broker dealers collapse that position because they know that the index changes in the underlying basket. So they collapse that position and then they just reopen it after quadruple witching. So what you'll see is these massive inflows this week. And I think there's like $30 billion of ETF inflows. The majority of it is just collapsing positions ahead of this. But what you will find when brokers put out their reports 2 or 3 days later, there was these massive inflows going into, everybody was buying the dip. It's not true. It just happens every quarter, right? And it's the same thing when you get to December, right? I say this stuff till I'm blue in the face, but I still see the same thing. Like Zero Hedge will put out a report. There was $30 billion of inflows last week. It's all tied to index rebalancing, right? And you'll see the same thing in December. You'll see the same thing in March. You'll see the same thing in June. All right. The other thing to watch out for, longer than 30 seconds. The other thing to watch out for is volume on the open. Why? Because index futures expire on the open officially, right? Same thing, the institutions, they are arbing a spread. So what they will do is they will be putting down baskets of orders tomorrow. They may be sitting long, September futures contracts that go away, and they're going to have to offset that exposure with baskets of trades that are tied to the open. Because what does the equity futures price, right, am I saying that? Index futures price for expiration, what price do they expire that at? It's called SQ pricing. It's based on the opening of the underlying basket that it tracks. That is all what's called market on open, right? So there'll be massive orders on the open, right? And you'll see people on Twitter, oh my God, what was all this volume in Microsoft on the open? What was all this volume in Apple? Look at how many shares traded. It's all basically to offset exposure, and the orders are all done by, there will be some follow-through orders up till 9:35, but it will all be tied to the 9:30 print, opening print. All right, so let me, I can go over the indices very, very quickly. But again, those are some of the things to watch out for quadruple witching. I usually just stay away from the open, and I stay away from the close. Why? Because I just don't have any edge, right, to be trading whipsaw moves where I don't know what's coming in and out of an index, and that might see massive volume and whippy moves. NASDAQ holding all the moving averages looks fine for now. What about IWM? Still in the middle of the range. Came back nicely too. Doji for the day. Let's get into some of these single stock movers. Another great trading day. Just to kind of go over some of these moves. By the way, the Chinese internet names, they rallied most since the open. Retail did well. There was a stronger than expected retail sales report this morning. We covered that earlier. The semis, software names, that's where I was seeing the strength as well. We can go over just a couple of these semi names. Applied materials. Again, this has been a tricky one. Every time it seems to get to this 144 level, it turns back down. That's the nicest green candle that we've seen every time this has tried to get up here. Here. Specifically here, I think I traded one of these. I've been very cautious on this applied materials because I traded it back in June and I got upset when it didn't do this, right? It tried again, got to the top of value and failed. So I don't know. Sometimes it just takes a number of times. It could be that there's a seller in the name that's selling it once it gets to 143, 144. It doesn't look like they were impacting it today. So maybe this applied materials could really get going at this point. So again, it's definitely on watch. The weekly looks pretty good here as well. You've got this extension, which is probably why it's had some difficulty. 145.74. Let's move on. I added a position in MRVL. I've been watching this name since they reported earnings. I actually tried an option trade about a week ago and kind of bailed on it for small profits, but I actually added a stock trade today. Right, a few other names within the group. I've been long some AMD. I took one target the other day, 2 days ago. Now I'm waiting for this thing to maybe start to curl up here. Right, NVIDIA also looks fine too. It's just been very slow, which is fine. It's consolidating. That's what names do in uptrends. All right, so some of the best trades that I talked about in yesterday's video. Upstart. I said this on Twitter yesterday. I thought that this thing is starting to curl back up, and sure enough, what did I say exactly yesterday? Here's my post from yesterday. Gearing up for the next leg of the next leg. What did I say? I guess I had a grammar error in here, which I do frequently. Gearing up for next leg out of the bull flag. Discuss this trade. We gave a couple trade ideas in the trading room today. Here's how it looked yesterday. Bam, out to new highs. So up 5%, really strong. The play for me the last couple days too, one of the plays for me was this Sentinel. Again, what I tend to do is just see if I can find similar setups and just take advantage of them every time I see the setup, right? Have your stop price set. We talked about this move back into the 20-day moving average. Set your stop below the 20-day moving average and see if this thing wants to kick up and resolve in the direction of the prevailing trend. Beautiful looking trade today, up 7.7% today. Awesome, just awesome trade the last couple of days. This was a name that I had been watching leading up to earnings and really wasn't in it. And I was interested to see what they were going to do on the earnings report. I thought the earnings report was fine, but of course you had a little bit of digestion and new closing high for this today. So this was great. Also put that setup on. Also put that setup on Twitter yesterday. A couple of trades just to kind of, I always go over the trading blotter. I don't think anybody else does that, as far as I can tell, right? Goldman Sachs, I talked about this one in terms of having conviction, right? I thought that there was a chance that we might see a rebound in some of the banking names. I took a couple quick targets yesterday. I took a target first thing this morning, and then I took the balance of the trade-off. I just think the bank names are they're hard, right? They're hard to deal with, and if I don't have a lot of conviction in a trade, I'm out pretty quickly. Right? You could see I didn't do a lot of trading today, just because I have a lot of things working. It was another point that I was making in our member video today, was that sometimes you don't have to go crazy trading if you've got the right trades on that are working. and your strategy is that you want to be a little bit more conservative, just let the ones that you have on, just let them continue to work, right? And sometimes we feel like we have to touch every trade or manage it. Sometimes the best thing you could do is just let them do what they're doing. I thought DXCM was a good opportunity. A little bit. We just haven't seen too many dips in this one. This one up to 2.4% for the day, right? So again, just a lot of things really worked for me. This INMD, I originally put this on the day of the dip. Right? I thought this was kind of too good to be true. We just don't get that many dips in this name. This is spectacular. Up from 122 to 140 in just a couple days, and back out to new highs, just unbelievable. C Limited was also a name that had this huge secondary about a week ago. It's now recovered that gap, so it's filled the gap. So impressive after that type of secondary, massive secondary that they had, and another one up. Just continue to move from 323 up to 342. All right, I mentioned I've got a lot of these charts. Crocs. This is the name I was in yesterday. Again, you kind of have to pick and choose, right? Like how many names that you want to be in. I took off this trade yesterday. Nice, bottom line, nice continuation to the upside. CPRT, another name too, had closed very strong yesterday, above value. This one is the leader in this space, very strong and out just like that in 2 days. Out to new highs, out of consolidation onto new highs very, very quickly. What else did I want to cover? It covers. I didn't mention MDB. Again, not that big of a huge move, but still, I'm long this thing, and continue to kind of ratchet up those trailing stops, and I think looks pretty good. BILL. This was a trade idea that I gave to members right around the open. And this worked pretty well, right? We've just seen so many of these software names consolidate, go higher, consolidate, go higher. I don't know when this ends in terms of this momentum, but keep trailing stops on names. And of course, the king has been this Asan, just unbelievable since earnings, right? So congratulations if you're still holding this. I think it was today. It was mentioned as a Motley Fool pick or something. After this crazy move, it is almost doubled from earnings. I mean, that's insane, right? And again, remember where this thing was just in May. It was $29. It's $29 stock. I always find it funny, when you hear people on Twitter say, oh, if you put $10,000 in a name like back 15 years ago, and what is it worth today? If you put $10,000 in this stock 5 months ago, you would be sitting pretty right now. So congrats if you've held this one and managed to not look at it every day and just kind of let it do its thing. But again, $30 back in May, 117 now. Unreal. And it's not like they've cured cancer. Just straight up momentum. All right. Of course, the CEO. I'm hearing the CEO has been buying some shares in this thing too. NCNO. That was a name that we talked about yesterday. Also, almost at that VPOC. I saw a little bit of calls on the tape. So strong to quite strong. We talked about. I talked about Upstart. The other name that for some reason goes with Upstart is this AFRM. I ultimately think, and I'm sitting with a position, not a big position, but if this thing can stay above 116, where do I think this thing could get to? Maybe 133. Again, continue to see a lot of option activity in this thing on the long side. A few other names. We talked about Twitter yesterday. There was big option activity. There was more of it today. I got a nice easy level for you to watch if you're liking the setup in Twitter. 61.96. Right. You could also use the 200-day moving average. Keep it simple. The more that you could keep these trades simple, just the easier it is. Right. The easier it is to manage. The more that you could take emotion out of trading. I made this statement earlier, and I just think it's worthy of saying it again. Right. The wall of worry. There's always things to worry about with the market. There's the September seasonality. There's the quadruple witching. There's possible tax hikes. There's stuff going on with China, all kinds of regulatory issues with China, all kinds of other stuff going on with China, flying planes over Taiwan, Evergrande going on. Right? There's always North Korea sending missiles over the place. So there are things to worry about. Am I an expert on any of those things that I mentioned, especially towards the latter? No, I'm not. What am I really good at? Following price, following the trend, knowing where your in is and where your out is, pre-planning your trades. That is, believe it or not, that is going to tell you when to get in and get out of trades, right? So I talked about, let's go back to the S&P just for a minute, and then I probably have about two or three other names to mention. But if this thing does break the 50-day moving average, what will I be doing? Reducing risk, right? Some, will have to be forced, right? Today was a great day to get rid of some exposure for profits, right? But if we do break down, have a plan. How much are you going to reduce your risk by? Right? Or are you going to add puts, right? What is your game plan? Because all those other things that I mentioned, no one knows the answer to those things, right? And it's a great question. Somebody asked me yesterday, what are the implications of this Evergrande thing? I'm like, I've got no idea. No idea. I don't know what banks are holding. That's not my edge, right? My edge is just knowing where to get into positions, trading setups, finding really good companies that are doing something different, finding momentum, sector rotation, right? And knowing when I should be reducing risk, right? It's the best thing I could, I could, again, I'm not giving advice, but, just kind of sharing some of the things, as always, that I've learned over the years. Lows. I had to make a decision on the open here. I was looking at a couple different setups. I've been watching this lows for a while, so I'm willing to be a little bit patient with this thing. Right? I gave a little bit more in-depth analysis about this earlier in the room. Etsy was the other. I was like, hey, do I want to go into another growth name, or do I want to go in lows, which I've been watching? Etsy was apparently the direction to go into because up 3%. Notice the digestion at the virgin point of control. Right, a little bit of a false breakdown on this day, and it looks really good, I think. So again, like I said, I made a decision. I was like, I'm not going to go into both of these on the open because I hate to get involved in swing trades around the open. So I chose lows. I like to have something a little bit different in my portfolio. I don't like to have all high growth from a diversification standpoint, but all right. So that's it, guys, for the end of day video. So again, you can look at my trade blotter for the day. Pretty empty. I've been adding risk the last couple days, and I'm just kind of sitting with that risk and managing it. Right. Taking profits in some of the names, but also just ratcheting up trailing stops and trying to basically do what you're supposed to do with trading. Let your winners run and take off your losers quickly, right? Take off small losers, but try to let your winners run. So that's what I'm trying to do. A lot of these names, like I was saying today, like I've already taken 2 targets in Sentinel 1, and I'm like, it's optional to take another target here. But for me, like I've already taken 2 targets. So now it's the time for me to, try to get a big winner out of the name. So we'll see how it goes. Have a great night, everybody. Go Giants. It's going to be a difficult game, I would imagine, but I'm rooting for you, Giants. Have a great night, everybody.